The Black Vipers are a loyalist chapter of the Adeptus Astartes established during the course of the Ultima founding. The Black Vipers are somewhat unique for a Space Marine chapter, for they, along with the Covenant of Fire, Dragon Spears and Dark Krakens, were one of the first successor chapters to be officially recognized as being descended from the Salamanders Legion. Despite this, little information currently exists regarding the Black Vipers, save for the fact that they appear to be a fleet-based chapter, seemingly claiming no homeworld for themselves. The few pieces of information regarding the Black Vipers that do exist suggest that the chapter is extremely isolationist, deliberately avoiding contact with other Imperial factions and only making their presence known during times of conflict. This apparent predilection towards isolation and secrecy is so great that the Salamanders would come to learn of the Black Vipers purely by chance, several years after they had made contact with their other Ultima founding successors. Upon being made aware of the chapter's existence, the Salamanders would dispatch a chaplain named Secrecy to make contact with their new battle brothers. However, shortly after undertaking this mission, Secrecy would vanish without a trace. Whether or not the chaplain had succumbed to some sort of accident during his journey, such as having his ship becalmed within the depths of warp space, or if he had fallen victim to an even darker fate, remains unknown. Regardless, whenever the Black Vipers have taken to the field of battle, reports have surfaced noting that a number of agents in service to Belisarius Cawl, the man primarily responsible for overseeing the Primaris project, would never be too far away from this particular chapter. But why are the agents of Belisarius Cawl seemingly so fixated on monitoring the actions of the Black Vipers? One possibility is that the Black Vipers may have been selected by Cawl in order to field test newly developed weaponry and other types of battlefield equipment so as to ensure that such gear works as intended before it is subsequently mass-produced for the Adeptus Astartes. Cawl has been shown to be somewhat unconventional for a member of the Mechanicus due to the fact that he is himself an innovator of new technologies. One of Cawl's more famous creations in this regard is that of the aptly named Mark II Cawl pattern bolt rifle, which was re-engineered from the standard issue bolt gun in order to provide greater range, armor-piercing capability, and a modular construction that allows it to be modified into a number of different variants, such as the auto bolt rifle and the stalker bolt rifle. In the many years following the events of the Ultima founding, the Primaris Marines would be provided with an ever-increasing amount of newly developed war gear, much of it being supposedly designed by Cawl himself. Such examples not only include the Invicta tactical warsuit, but also the Invader ATV, as well as a plethora of additional weaponry which had been re-engineered from previously existing forms, such as melter rifles, assault bolters, and accelerator autocannons. The idea of a Space Marine chapter being selected to field test newly developed war gear isn't entirely unprecedented, as the Mentors chapter have also been rumored to regularly field test many examples of weaponry or even vehicles on the behalf of the Adeptus Mechanicus, although the true extent of this is admittedly speculative, with much of the information in this regard remaining unconfirmed. If the Black Vipers were themselves field-testing weaponry and other forms of equipment at the behest of Belisarius Cawl, then this would explain as to why Cawl's agents would remain with such close proximity of the chapter during their battlefield operations, so as to monitor and record the results of such equipment being utilized in a combat situation, allowing them to determine whether or not such technology is indeed ready for mass production. This could even potentially explain as to why the Black Vipers are themselves so secretive, as the chapter may have sworn an oath akin to that of a non-disclosure agreement, taking care to ensure that no others, not even their closest allies, learn of such experimental equipment before it is deemed ready for distribution by Cawl. This particular possibility could also explain the disappearance of Secrecy. If the chaplain had borne witness to something that the Black Vipers had sworn to keep secret from all others, unintentionally or otherwise, then the chapter's warriors may have been forced to kill the chaplain in order to ensure that their oaths were upheld. While this could be considered a rather extreme reaction, to say the least, it is worth noting that the swearing and the subsequent upholding of an oath is a matter of utmost importance for many Space Marine chapters, whose warriors would rather choose death over accepting the dishonor that comes with breaking such an important vow. But if Cawl wished to utilize a Space Marine chapter in order to test newly developed weaponry and other such equipment, then why establish an entirely new chapter to do so, as opposed to employing the previously mentioned Mentors chapter, who, as stated earlier, are themselves implied to already perform such a service to the Adeptus Mechanicus? This could be due to a matter as simple as trust, or rather a lack thereof. After all, as detailed within the novel Spear of the Emperor, it would be due to the actions of the Mentors chapter, albeit inadvertently, that would see Ikene Dubaku, the chapter master of the Celestial Lions, being murdered by a Kalidas assassin that had infiltrated the ranks of the Mentors by adopting the guise of a chapter serf. Since the Inquisition, who were implied to have orchestrated Dubaku's death, were able to send an agent of the Officio Audiorum to infiltrate the ranks of the Mentors, then it's possible that Cawl, should he have ever come to learn of such a situation, may have deemed the Mentors as compromised, and as a result may decide to not risk granting the chapter, or rather any inquisitorial agents, access to such experimental equipment, instead choosing to create an entirely new chapter for this purpose. Another possibility regarding the Black Vipers is that they were created with the intention of being, for lack of a better term, the pet chapter of Belisarius Cawl. While this may initially appear to be somewhat absurd, such a notion is not outside the realm of possibility. For example, the High Lords of Terror, and in particular the Master of the Administratum, are known to make extensive use of the Minotaurs chapter, utilizing them as their own personal enforcers, and are not averse to unleashing them upon any and all who dare to question their will, regardless of their status within the Imperial Society. This would even lead to the Minotaurs coming into conflict with not only a number of loyalist Space Marine chapters, such as the Imperial Fists, but also the golden-clad warriors of the Adeptus Custodes, the personal bodyguards of the Emperor himself, on at least one occasion. The idea that Cawl could have founded a chapter solely to serve his own ends is not entirely unfeasible, especially due to the fact that Cawl has been known to undertake actions that are borderline insubordinate, or even heretical. Not only this, but Cawl's personal bodyguard, a warrior named Alpha Primus, is also noted to be a primaris marine, one that is rumored to be the very first of this newest breed of Astartes. Since Cawl is willing to make use of a primaris marine to serve as both his bodyguard and a personal assistant, then the idea of Cawl making use of an entire Space Marine chapter to further his own goals, while perhaps initially seeming somewhat improbable, is not completely impossible. After all, according to the novel War of Secrets, the first generation of primaris marines, known as Grey Shields, were known to regard Cawl as a type of father figure, with these Astartes even referring to the Arch Magos specifically as Father Cawl. Because of this inherent reverence that these early generations of primaris held towards their creator, it seems reasonable to assume that Cawl could have easily persuaded an entire chapter of primaris marines, such as through the use of various hyper-indoctrination techniques, to have them answer directly to him, and him alone. However, if the Black Vipers were founded to serve as Cawl's equivalent to the Minotaurs, then should such a revelation become public knowledge, this could eventually lead to a confrontation between the Arch Magos and Rabuta Guilliman, the Primarch of the Ultramarines and Lord Commander of the Imperium. Indeed, Guilliman could easily view the notion of Cawl having his own pet chapter as that of the Arch Magos attempting to consolidate power in one form or another. The Primarch may even fear that Cawl may seek to unleash the chapter against the Fabricator General of Mars, a position of power that, according to the construct known as the Cawl Inferior, Cawl has been known to openly and unabashedly covet and take the position for himself in a bloody coup. As shown within the novel Dark Imperium, following his conversation with the Cawl inferior, Guilliman would note that, in time, the Arch Magos may become, in his words, a problem. Because of the Primarch's conversation with the Cawl inferior, which presumably would have relayed some sort of transcription to its master, this may have begun sowing the seeds of paranoia within Cawl, who in turn may have created his own pet chapter in order to defend himself, should Guilliman, for one reason or another, decide to rid himself of the Arch Magos. If this were indeed the case, then Ser Cagozi may have learned of the reasoning behind the chapter's creation, forcing the Black Vipers to eliminate him before he could report such information to either the salamanders or the wider Imperium at large, and in turn ensure that the true purpose of the chapter remains a mystery to all, save for the agents of Cawl. However, it should be noted that while the Cawl inferior claims that the Arch Magos wishes to become the Fabricator General of Mars, Cawl himself, by contrast, as shown within the novel The Great Work, states that he has absolutely no desire to hold such a position, and even seems somewhat surprised that his creation would have the temerity to make such a bold proclamation in the first place. Alternatively, perhaps the Black Vipers, instead of being used to preemptively prevent Cawl from being deposed, are instead being used to effectively police the other Ultima founding chapters in a manner similar to that undertaken by the Space Wolves Legion during the course of the Great Crusade. This then leads into the final major possibility regarding as to why the agents of Cawl are so interested in the Black Vipers, that the chapter's actions are being monitored due to the Vipers being suspected of heresy or treason. While there has yet to be a single officially recorded instance of an Ultima founding chapter succumbing to the temptations of the ruinous powers and becoming fully fledged Chaos Space Marines, there has been at least one instance of primaris Marines from a pre-existing chapter turning renegade. As detailed within the story Consequences, an Imperial Torchbearer fleet that bore Primaris Grey Shield reinforcements for the Brazen Drakes chapter would discover that half of the chapter's warriors, including that of their chapter master, had turned their backs upon the Imperium, resulting in a chapter civil war. Atul Tyvar, a shield captain of the Adeptus Custodes in command of the fleet, would declare the Brazen Drakes to be Hereticus Diabolus Extremis and would order for the chapter's Grey Shields to be detained. Captain Girion would attempt to reason with Tyvar, stating that he and his brothers were indeed loyal to the Imperium and that it was unfair for the Primaris Marines to be judged by the actions of a chapter that they had, up until this point, no prior history with. Tyvar, however, would remain unconvinced, and when Girion continued to argue his point, the Custodian would execute the Primaris captain. The Primaris would in turn open fire upon the Custodes, causing widespread fighting throughout the entire fleet, although the Primaris Marines would ultimately be put down by the Custodes and the Sisters of Silence. If the Black Vipers were themselves accused of being traitors or heretics, but continued to profess their loyalty to the Imperium, then Cawl may have decided to send his agents in order to monitor the chapter's actions, so as to determine whether such claims are truly justified or not. If the Black Vipers are teetering upon the verge of turning renegade, or are otherwise dabbling with the powers of chaos, then this could potentially explain the chapter's isolationist conduct, so as to prevent others from learning of their heretical actions. But then again, the chapter may have instead decided to cut off contact from their allies, so as to avoid persecution from those who may regard them as traitor, or otherwise prevent those that they fight alongside from bearing the stigma of associating with quote-unquote traitors. But if the Black Vipers are indeed guilty of heresy, then the chapter may very well have murdered Ser Cagozi due to the chaplain having learned of where the chapter's loyalties truly lay, or, more disturbingly, may have even sacrificed him to the Chaos Gods in order to earn their blessing. While this latter prospect does appear to be fairly unlikely, given the overall lack of evidence to support such a possibility, it is still a chilling notion. Perhaps one day, we may finally learn the truth behind the actions of the Black Vipers. What do you think? Leave a comment below, and thanks for watching!